Welcome back, everyone, to this week's edition of Impactful Teamwork. Super excited to have you here again today. And I'm Julia Felton, your host and guide. And today I'm very excited that we have another guest on the show. And today we have Steve Frazier. And Steve is the founder, a serial entrepreneur, a self-sabotage coach. Did you believe such a thing existed? And an author of Release the Coffee Cuffs. So, Steve, welcome to Impactful Teamwork. We're really happy to have you here today. And thank you for joining me on the show.
It is my pleasure, Julia. Thank you for the gracious introduction.
Oh, thank you. So, today, everyone, I've asked Steve to come on and share a little bit about his story. As a serial entrepreneur, he's been through a lot of different business ventures, and he's very candidly agreed to share with us some of the challenges that have come with setting up those businesses. Because I think we often just talk about all the really positive things in business and what we need to make success. And very few people are prepared to roll up their sleeves like Steve and actually share behind the scenes about the things that have worked and haven't worked in setting up your own business and leading teams and growing and scaling a business. So I thought this would be quite fun to do for us just to get this different perspective today. So Steve, thank you so much. Why don't you just start by telling us, how did you become a serial entrepreneur? And let's start talking about some of those things that came up along the way.
Excellent. So I started my entrepreneurial journey when I was 11 as a paperboy. So I had my own
Wow.
paper route, made my own money. I bought my first restaurant when I was 28 with no money down, and realized now I had a lot of experience in the restaurant business before that. Okay, that helps. My mom and dad borrowed us $7,000 for inventory, and I was in the right place at the right time. And we all create our own coincidences or circumstances, as it may be.
Yeah.
There was a guy that had a restaurant that was going to fail. It was in a regional mall with one of the world's largest landlords. They knew he was going down. The bank knew he was going down. He knew he was going down. He was losing $10,000 a month. So everybody got together and said, "Okay, let's get Steve in there." So I went in and I worked really hard. The first year I had 5 days off. 3 of those days the mall was closed. So
Wow.
I had 2 days off. Okay. Now, my advice to you is, if you are willing to put in the time and the effort, you can make almost anything work. Okay. I had experience, but I had passion. I love to talk to people, which is a lot to do in the restaurant business. So over the next 20 years, my wife and I built and operated 5 more restaurants.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Then in 2008, during the recession, everything went to pot. And so we got out of that. I did some other things, a number of other things in the next 12 years. And then we lead up to my first venture on the internet. And that was something called New Bizpreneur. And that was a coaching program. And I had started a lot of businesses, and I had a substantial program. It was good. It was really good. Except nobody ever knew about it, because I did not take my own advice. Because when you start a new business, there's a couple things you got to do. You've got to have a problem to solve that you're going to solve. Okay. You have to have a promise, and then you have to act on it. And a lot of that has to do with passion. If you're going to start a business and don't have passion for it,
Yeah.
you're probably going to fail. I'm not judging you. I'm just saying that's how it works. So what I did in that particular business is I had all my eggs in one basket, and that was the coaching business. And I failed to recognize the fact that I never knew how to reach my target market. My target market was startup businesses. And ironically, and we both know, people start businesses every day. Small businesses in their homes, sometimes part-time, sometimes 5 hours a week, and then sometimes 100 hours a week. How do you reach them? I hired 2 different coaches, spent $14,000, and never booked a call. I didn't get any clients, but I never even booked a call. So I shifted into my next venture, which was Release the Coffee Cups. Now, how I got there is some good and some bad. My wife got sick 13 years ago. She became very ill. And for 2 years, when undiagnosed, and ultimately our daughter, who is a natural health practitioner, diagnosed her with Lyme disease. Okay. So for 2 years, she had undiagnosed Lyme disease, caused a lot of damage. She's still recovering, but she's alive and very functional. Then several years ago, I was certified as a self-sabotage coach. So putting those two together, in self-sabotage, there's a pillar, the physical pillar. And we all self-sabotage, whether it's through nicotine, alcohol, caffeine, prescription drugs, regular drugs, overeating, lack of sleep. These are all physical self-sabotage techniques. I chose caffeine. And so when I looked at this, I thought, how can I help people and make money doing it at the same time? Okay. At the end of the day, we all need to make money. Let's face it, we got to pay bills, we want to travel, whatever the case. So I was sitting with my wife and I said, so how can I get people to believe me and trust me when I'm talking about caffeine? And because and this is a situation where you are in any business you're going to be in. Why are people going to take you seriously? Why are they going to choose your product over everybody else? You have to be different. You have to have either added value or something very unique. And so she looked at me and she said, first thing you can do is you can get a PhD. Now, she has a PhD. She's an online college professor. And I proofed every one of her papers for 6 years. She did her whole college education from associate's degree to PhD in 6 years.
Wow.
Now, people would say that's impossible. No, it's not. Because when you're driven and you have passion, you talk to people. She did her bachelor's and her master's in 4 years.
Wow.
Which normally that's what most people do, a bachelor's in the States. I don't know how it is there in England, and then her PhD could not be expedited. And that took about 2 years because they don't let you expedite.
Yeah.
There's a lot of work to do. So what happened is that I proofed all of her papers. And I looked at her when she said this to me and she said, I'm not doing that. Okay. I have an MBA. Okay. I did it while I was on the road online. I learned a lot how to do things, but I had no desire to have a PhD. She said, I said, what else can I do? You can write a book. Because the key here is to be a subject matter expert. And again, in any business you're going to do, people are going to question, why should they back you? Why should they buy your product? It's because you are an expert at what you do and you have passion for it.
Yep.
And so I said, well, that sounds like fun. Her and I had written a book 6 years ago. It was a compilation book of 12 authors, but we put it together. We each had a chapter. So we were pretty familiar with that. And obviously I was very familiar with writing a book with references and citations, because if I'm going to do this, it can't just be my opinion. Okay. Because in the real world, your opinion doesn't really matter. I hate to break that to anybody. You have to come to the table with some objective facts. So I wrote the book and I had a great time doing it. I would recommend, if you have a passion for anything, if you write a book about it, what it's going to do is it's just going to make your knowledge base is going to expand dramatically. I have over 300 references in my book, and that's just the ones I used. That's not the ones that I didn't use.
Sure.
So what it did is it allowed me. So as I looked at my business plan for Release the Coffee Cups, first one is I wrote the book. Okay. And it's available anywhere, Amazon, Kindle, the whole deal. And also on our website, but I'll throw that in later. But so what's my second option? I created a coaching program. And so my goal there is to coach people that want to have support. Some people have a hard time quitting things. Caffeine is an addiction because it's a psychoactive stimulant drug. Okay. That's not arguable. That's an objective fact. And if you don't think that's a fact, quit for 12 to 24 hours. And if you are okay and you have no side effects, you're not addicted. If you have headaches, if you're brain fog, if you have fatigue, you have an addiction. Okay. Because the only thing that can solve that is more caffeine.
Mm.
because your body, it has to do with adenosine receptors in your brain, your circadian rhythm, all this stuff. So the point is, we support people that can't do it by themselves because sometimes people need help. The third revenue stream is a speaking business, okay, which I intend and which I am pursuing through
Mhm.
podcasts and then through actually getting an agency to book me
Yeah.
for wellness conferences for birth defects. Caffeine has dramatic effect on fetuses in the womb.
Well,
And so as you look at your business plan, and when I did the new Bizpreneur, I had a 13-page business plan. Now, that's 13 pages that you fill in. When it's done, it's probably 50 pages. And it's very intense. And it covers everything. Because when you are going to start a business, especially if you have to go and ask somebody for money, and there's a whole bunch of people you can ask for money.
yep.
Okay. The first go-to is your savings or your equity in your home, possibly. Then it's family and friends. And then you might want to look at a lender, perhaps a bank. And then you look at venture capitalists, you look at angel funds. There's 20 different places you can get money. And I'm going to mention something here. There's a gentleman named Randy Pausch, and he did something called The Last Lecture. You can look this up on YouTube, and it's worth listening to. I've listened to it almost probably 10 times.
Okay.
He talks about why it's so hard to do some things. Okay. And he talks about a wall and why is the wall so high? And it's there to stop the people that don't really want the desired result. Because if you really want the desired result, you get over the wall.
Yeah.
Okay. As an example, my last restaurant that I built, which was 20 years ago, I built it with no money down. In the previous year, I had filed a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, and I raised $2 million to build
Wow.
this restaurant. It was a freestanding unit because I had a great plan and I had great passion. And so, is there any reason? And obviously, there's always exceptions. Okay. There's some things that somebody just can't do for
Yeah.
whatever reason. But most of those times you hear no, it's just a reason that they don't want to do it. And then you have to tell them why they should do it.
Yeah.
There's a saying, I can't do this. Okay. What does that really mean? It means I won't or I don't want to. Okay. It doesn't mean they can't. They just choose not to do it.
Yeah.
And so looking at people, talking to people, and you say to yourself, okay, I have this block here. How do I get around it? How do I overcome it? Then you have to sit down, you have to analyze it.
Yeah.
And this is in any business, whether it's brick and mortar, whether it's online, or even if it's a combination, because it ultimately all comes down to the same thing. If you have a great business plan, people will borrow you money and you will probably be successful. My wife teaches a class. It's a master's level class. And she had a Zoom. This was last year. There was a gentleman in there and he was on the call with her and it was a one-on-one and I happened to be listening. And he said, and the course was writing a business plan, and they have to write a pretty detailed business plan. And he said to Brenda, he said, in the last 3 years, I've started 2 businesses and they both failed. And I now know why, because I never wrote a business plan. Because when you write your business plan, you see all the things that are going to happen. You probably cover 90, if you write a good business plan, 90 to 95%. And then you got the 5-10% that's just going to come out of nowhere. And you have to deal with that.
Sure.
And that's where you have to be quick on your feet. And, you look at where you're going to get the money. What are you going to do if the economy turns? What are you going to do if your product is so good and it takes off? And this is something for anybody that's listening. What do you do if your product is so good and it takes off and you're making $1 million just like that? because it's just a fantastic thing. Now you have competitors somewhere, unless you're a first mover. If you're a first mover, then you're a rock star because then you've got it made because you don't really have any competition in the beginning. But most of the time, there are very few. Apple, Microsoft, those were first movers, and there's others. But so what happens when you have this fantastic product and then, as in the United States, I don't know if you have Walmarts in England, do you?
No, we don't have Walmart over here, but Walmart for anyone listening is, oh, how would I describe it? Oh, it's a big grocery store, isn't it, in a way?
Half of it's
Yeah.
grocery.
Yeah.
Yep. And then half, they got
Yeah.
TVs, they got sporting goods,
Yeah.
they got cosmetics, and they're huge.
Right.
They call them super centers for a reason.
Yeah.
They're
Definitely.
monstrosities. So what happens is that all of a sudden, Walmart has a product that's very similar to you. Then you
Mhm.
price this because when you started your business, you have to go out and look at what your competitors are charging,
Sure.
right? All of a sudden, Walmart cuts your price by 20% and your sales drop 50% because all of a sudden, and I'm using Walmart as an example.
Yeah. Yeah.
It may not be
Sure.
relevant, but it's a good example
Yeah.
simply because now your sales just dropped 50% because your competitor dropped their price 20% because they can afford it.
Yeah.
Can you afford it? Okay, did you price this appropriately, anticipating possibly that somebody was going to undercut you with a very similar product? And so these are all things that have to be taken into consideration.
Yeah. So I'm really curious, and thank you so much for sharing that. What, because you talked about two things that I really picked up on. One was we've got physical self sabotage, but let's talk a little bit, can we, about your mental self sabotage? Because I think when we're running businesses, it is some of us can do things that actually self-sabotage our business by not taking the action, not having enough motivation to get over the wall, as you described it there. And I'm just wondering, have you got any thoughts on strategies that you can use when we get into this space where we realize there's actually something we really want? We want to really scale our business. We want to grow our team. We want to bring more people on board. And yet we engage in all those self-sabotaging actions that stop us taking the action we need to take to make that happen. I'm just
Yes.
curious about
Right.
what some of your thoughts might be about what, as a business leader, we can do to prevent that. Or indeed, I guess it comes back down to beliefs, why we're even doing that in the first place. There's some incongruence, isn't we're self-sabotaging because at some deep
Yes.
level, we don't believe in what we want, or we're scared about what we want. So fear kicks in and our unnatural defense mechanisms kick in. So please just share a few thoughts on that for us.
Yeah. First of all, you know a lot about self-sabotage. Okay.
I'm an
So I'm
expert.
giving you a lot of credit.
I'm an
Yeah,
expert.
right. As many of us are, they acknowledge it. The first thing is understanding exactly what you just said. What are you doing to self-sabotage your business? Okay. And a lot of it has to do with motivation because you have to be in your own business. You have to be motivated. And there's no one there. There's no cheerleading team. Nobody, you might have a partner, wife or husband or family that's giving you encouragement, but you don't have a boss that says, good job. You did a
Yeah.
fantastic job. Keep up the good work. I'm going to give you a raise. There's nobody like that. There's nobody to give you positive affirmation. So what you need to do is you need to do it yourself. So journaling is a fantastic thing to do as a small business owner. Okay. And that can be pre-opening and then during your opening and then after opening. And what you do is every night, and this doesn't take an hour. This can be 2 to 5 minutes.
Yep.
I have a spreadsheet. It's called Wins for the Day. And it's on an Excel spreadsheet. And all I do is write down what are 3 things I did today that I considered wins. They could be business, they could be personal, they could be anything.
Yep.
If I had a good weight day, battling my weight, I'm not overweight, I just want to be less. So what did I do today? That was a win. And then I have, what are you going to do tomorrow? Now I do this at night before I go to bed. What does it do? It makes you not worry about what you're going to do tomorrow because you already wrote it down. Okay. And I would say for anybody and this isn't just about business, it's just about life. Plan out your next day because when you go to bed, And here, this goes back to that self-sabotage. When you go to bed, right before you go to sleep, you're in something called theta brainwave state. And this is where it actually
Mhm.
reprograms your subconscious. Because as adults, we only have two windows: first thing in the morning and last thing at night, right before we go to sleep. And then we have theta in our sleep, but that you don't control that. Show gratitude.
Mhm.
Okay. Show gratitude for your day. What happened today that I'm grateful for? Because guess what? That's what your subconscious is going to think about when you go to sleep.
Yeah.
Okay. If you're thinking about all the ways you messed up during the day or all this massive workload you have tomorrow, and we do hypnotherapy work, which is fantastic. We have some sessions, and I had sessions in the New Bizpreneur. I have sessions in the Release the Coffee Cuffs for quitting caffeine. One is for motivational. There's
Yep.
motivational hypnotherapy, and you can get some of this actually online. And Bruce Lipton on YouTube, if you look at some of his stuff, is fantastic because you have been programmed to be part of the herd. And this goes right back to what you just said. Why do people make themselves fail? It's because they want to be part of the herd. And the herd is not you and I, because you and I are rebels. We're doing
Mhm.
things here that most people don't do.
Yep.
There's 8.5 billion people in the world, and let's face it, they're not doing podcasts. Very few of them are, right?
Yep.
Especially about new things. And so you have to get the mindset that you don't need the herd's approval to do what you're doing, because people generally will try to bring you down to their level. As you are excelling, as you are getting better as a business person, even in your personal life, alcohol is a great example. You walk into a bar and order a non-alcoholic beer or a soda, people look at you like you're weird. You drink decaf coffee in the coffee room, or tea in your case. In England, I'm sure there's a lot more tea than coffee. Okay, you walk in and you have your tea break and you're drinking decaf. And people get upset because you are not now like them. And you aren't part of the herd. You're the rebel. And because you've acknowledged the fact that possibly caffeine's not good for you, or whatever the case, whatever the herd wants you to do. Okay. And a lot of it is success. We had some days of great success, and we had a lot of people that didn't care for us because of our success.
Yeah.
And they try to tell you it's all given to you. They never even thought about the days that I worked 16 hours a day to
No.
make those restaurants run or make this business run. I work 7 days a week. So does my wife. And if you're not willing to do that, I coached a girl last year, and she wanted to open up a gym and a small coffee shop with it, sell some health food, health smoothies.
Yep. Yep.
After 4 months, I said to her, and she's got two small children. I think they're 7 and 9 or 8 and 10, like that. I said, you do realize that you are going to have to sacrifice some time with them. And she ultimately realized after 4 months of getting together, and she was a friend, I was doing all this for free. And she said, I'm not going to do this because I'm going to lose my kid's childhood. She may do this in 5 or 10 years. I think she has the desire and the passion and the knowledge, but what are you willing to sacrifice to be successful?
Mhm.
Because if you're going to open up a new business, again, brick and mortar, online, doesn't matter. Something you're doing is you're not going to be able to do, whether it's watching TV. And I would say, as a self-sabotage coach, if you're watching TV, stop right now. It is the most useless thing in the whole world because all they're doing is programming you to what they want you to do.
Mhm.
Okay. And there's so many studies and there's so many things on YouTube that you can go and look. I'm not making this up because I don't need to. Okay. Because if they tell you enough times that this is good for you, you think it's good for you, even though it's not. And that would be the short version of self-sabotage in a small business.
Yeah. Yeah.
Positive affirmations. On my bathroom mirror, I have a big sheet of paper. It says, I am enough. I see it every morning, every night, every time I
Yeah.
go in there during the day. I also have 10 affirmations that I read every morning and every night. And there's a gentleman named Og Mandino. He wrote a book called The Greatest Salesman in the World.
Right.
And in that book, he has 10 scrolls, and each scroll is 3 pages, and they're life changing. They're affirmations about life, I have one, I printed out the whole thing. I have it on my office wall, and it's called I Will Act Now.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you're stuck in whatever you're doing, if you act, things change. Because when you don't act, you're stuck. And then what happens? You become more stuck.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're not doing what you wanted to do. I will act now. I will act now. Those are the first 3 sentences of that particular scroll. So look it up. You can actually get it on YouTube and listen to it. You don't even have to read it. When you're walking or working or driving, just listen to it. It's fantastic. I would really suggest you do some of these things as a business owner or a potential business owner to get in the right mindset.
Yeah.
And so if you want anything from me, you can contact me at releasethecoffeecuffs.com. That's my website. You can buy the book there if you want, but you can also contact me. If you email me, I'd be happy to answer your questions. It doesn't have to be about caffeine. It can be about a small business. I'm meeting tomorrow with a guy in Ireland.
All right.
And he read my book and he wants to start a podcast.
Cool.
Now, I've got 40 podcasts under my belt as a guest. I've got 25 more scheduled in the next 2 months.
Wow.
I'm getting the hang of it. Okay. As a guest, my daughter and I do a podcast together, and we took a break. She moved her business. We lost our studio. Now we're going to get back into it. So everything doesn't cost you money. You can get advice. And as a businessman, as a small business entrepreneur, the more you give, the more you get.
Yeah. Law of reciprocity.
And
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much, Steve, for sharing a little bit about your journey, the challenges with self-sabotage that we all have, the need to have really strong motivation and passion to be successful. They were the 2 big takeaways, as well as having the right mindset in terms of your business success and where you're going. And for listeners, I'll just refer you to a podcast that I look back on the old episodes, but I actually did one on mindset versus skill set in business. And I think success in business is 80% mindset and like 20% skill set. You might want to check
Correct.
as well. But
Ironically, my daughter, she's also a mindset coach.
all right. Okay.
So I get that from her. I get some of that from her.
So everyone, if you want to reach out to Steve, please do. And his contact details will be in the show notes. But Steve, thanks so much for taking us behind the curtain, taking us a little bit on your entrepreneurial journey and sharing with us some of the challenges that you've had come up, because I think it's so refreshing that we really look at the real things that are going on for business leaders right now and not just all the bright, shiny things that we see. So thank you so much for your time and energy today.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right,
Okay.
everyone. Until next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.